Good morning, I'm Dr. Jean Fourie, and I want to speak to you now about a useful strategy for remedial teachers called dialogue journals. This is a really useful thing for you to put in place with learners who are struggling to write. And I do know some teachers who use dialogue journals for all the learners in their classes, and it's really useful, particularly for foundation and intermediate phase learners. But I'm sure it can be used for all phases as well. So a dialogue is a conversation. We usually have conversations with people orally, but in this journal, we are writing down our conversations. So it's an informal written conversation between two people. For remedial teachers, this is a very useful strategy. You buy a small little book, very small little booklet, something similar to this, or it can be hardcover, or it can be one of those soft little booklets, or you can make a little book. And each child gets their own book, and that you can spend some time putting pictures on the book and individualizing it with the child's name and something that is of interest to them. And so the book belongs to the child, and the child will take that book with them when they leave your remedial teaching, and it's theirs to keep. So the learner keeps this personal journal, and it is a written conversation between the learner and the teacher. And there are no topics that are taboo here. This is private, and so teachers and learners can speak about anything that they want to. Okay, so there is a really useful website that I've given here that gives some ideas on dialogue journals, and you can see the learners will put pictures on them and make them look, individualize them with drawings or cutting out pictures or whatever they want to put on the front. And the key thing about the dialogue journals is that you are building a very strong relationship between the teacher and individual students. So it's an individualized process, and this makes remedial teaching just so much more powerful. Here are some examples. What happens is the teacher starts off, and she, depending on the age of the learners, you can see this entry that the teacher has put in here is for learners who are certainly not foundation phase. In foundation phase, you would start off your entries very simply, so that with words that you know that the learner is going to read. And it is handwritten. So if these dialogue journals come from a site where this teacher writes to every child in her class, and so she's writing many of these, 20 or 30 of them. But for remediation, you would just do it with the learners who are having difficulty and being referred to you. But it must be handwritten. So the teacher is modeling writing, and she's modeling how to do paragraphs in this case, and sentences, and how handwriting works. And then the book gets given to the learner. They take the book home with them. In their own time, they have to read the teacher's handwriting and then make their own response. So So dear Abby was the teacher, and dear Mrs. Galbraz is the teacher. The learner is writing back to the teacher on the next page, and writing in their best writing, but they can write whatever they want to write. Okay. Then the learner brings it back to the session, and the teacher reads what they've written and writes the next response on the next page. And when she's written that, it goes back to the learner. So this is a thing that could happen once a week, that a dialogue goes backwards and forwards between the teacher and the pupil. The key thing about when you get these dialogue journals coming back to you, the same principles apply to the principles of allowing choice and freedom. The child can write about anything, they can answer your questions, but they can also introduce new topics and tell you about other things. And we are not using this as a tool where you correct on their writing. So the teacher is not marking the writing. These underlined words here are what the child has done. The teacher just reads it and does not do any corrections on the child's writing. In the next entry that the teacher does in this journal, she will answer some of these questions. And the trick is, if you see any words that are spelt incorrectly, or areas, but particularly incorrect spelling words, is that you then use that word in its correct spelling in your next entry to the child. So then when the child gets the journal back from you and they read it, they then are reading that spelling word in its correct, with its correct spelling, so they can see where they made their mistakes. If they then persist in spelling that word incorrectly in the next entry, so this is it's a dialogue, it's a journal, it's going backwards and forwards between the teacher, the whole, for many times. So if once a week, it's going between the teacher and the learner, up and down. So in the next entries, if the teacher persists, if you pick up persistent incorrect spelling of words, then those would be words that you would remediate in a remedial session separately from the dialogue journal. The journal's purpose is the relationship, and we cannot build relationships with pupils if we are correcting things like spelling and punctuation and using red marks and red lines in their work. That immediately shifts the power balance to the teacher as being the expert, and we don't let the child take any control over their own learning. So in a dialogue journal, and even when you are remediating the writing process with learners, you want to be very aware of the power that you have as a teacher. And so you're trying to shift that power, you're facilitating the child to become empowered to correct their own work and to do their own revisions. So be very conscious of that process. The benefits of dialogue journals, as I've said, it's shifting that power differential from the all-powerful teacher to the pupil, so that the pupil takes some ownership. It allows us to build strong relationships with the learners, and we know from research that a learner who is having adverse childhood conditions needs one caring teacher to take some trouble with them and to care about them and their personal lives. And so this is a really useful way to do that. And we've previously had examples where pupils have spoken about very, very bad things that have happened in their lives, in their dialogue journals, where somebody has died in their family, but that they've said in their journal. For instance, the one little boy wrote, "It was a very sad day today. We had a funeral for my granny, and everybody was crying." So it allows the teacher an opportunity, a glimpse into the personal lives of the learners. And then you know which learners you can go and support, and you can give them some care and attention. But besides all the good emotional feel-good stuff, it also assists with improving the fluency of the learner's writing when there is no pressure on them for marks. This is not getting marked. The topic is of a personal interest to the pupil. So you as the teacher are going to pick up on some personal thing. Maybe it's a child who likes to play soccer, or they have an interest in cricket, or they have an interest in some music or something. Try and pick up something that they are interested in, and then you are writing about that. It also allows the teacher to spot errors, which can then be taught in remedial lessons. So as you're reading the child's work that they are writing on their own, not in pressure, not with you watching them, they're writing this as homework. It's being done out of your session. They are reading your entry, and they're writing a response and writing something additional to it. You can ask some questions in your dialogues to elicit some response from the child as well. So you are trying your best to get them to do as much writing as possible. And often you'll see at the start, there'll be very few words and short little sentences, but as the year progresses and they become more confident, they will start writing more and more, and the writing will get longer, and you will have more content from them. So it's unobtrusive, individualized instruction of writing, punctuation, spelling, and sentence construction. And you are modeling the writing behavior for the learner. So it does mean that as a remedial teacher, you will be writing yourself. And that's also good for you as a teacher to also be writing down your words. And remember, it's got to be handwritten. So you are hand writing these entries to the child backwards and forwards as you progress through the year. Okay, I want to stop there and take some questions.